How do you space out your fats in all your meals if you're eating 6 meals? If I'm eating 6 meals, my fats are going to get ramped up through the day. So I probably have very little fat in my first meal. Maybe I have 2 whole eggs. So there's about 10 grams of fat there. And then as I get through the day, I'm going to increase my fats. Usually my pre-workout meals, because I usually have 2 or 3 pre-workout meals, are very low in fat. My post-workout meal is probably also very low in fat. Might have a little bit if I have ground beef or steak or something like that. My last 2 meals of the day are usually higher in fat, especially the last meal of the day. So it's kind of a curved, if you look at it on a chart, it would be a curved graph. I don't want a lot of fats before I train because it's going to slow me down. It's going to make me feel bloated. I don't want a lot of fats after I train because I want those carbs that I'm eating to get shuttled into my system. After that, though, I want to reduce my carbs a little bit. So when I reduce my carbs a little bit, meals 5 and 6, I'm probably going to increase my fats. Any tips for someone coming from a high-level sport that is transitioning into purely bodybuilding, strength type of training? I don't really have any tips because I'm not sure what you're looking for. I mean, I don't think it would be any different for somebody coming from a high-level sport than it would be for someone not. You're going to come into the sport, and you're going to, the only benefit you're going to have is what it takes to do, what it takes discipline-wise to reach a high level. So you're going to just have to implement those things into your bodybuilding program. But I mean, as far as the actual program itself, it's not going to be any different for an athlete that's coming from a high level sport or somebody who's starting. Bodybuilding is bodybuilding. The nice thing is you'll be able to use a lot of those disciplines from the other sport. You'll be able to use them in the bodybuilding world. When is Hosstile dropping a carb powder? Again, guys, in due time. What would cause rear delt tricep pain when doing pull downs? I don't know. It's a good idea to see a therapist. If you're doing pull downs and you're getting rear delt tricep pain, I don't know. You might have an impingement. You might have a small tear. There could be a host of things. It could be a small tear in your delt. Could be a small tear in your tricep insertion. It could be a host of things, but I would definitely just see it there. People send me messages all the time and like, well, I have a pain here and I have a pain there. And I would love to be able to answer them, guys, but I always don't like to, I don't like to play doctor because it's not really beneficial for anybody. I think the best thing for you to do is see somebody, get it diagnosed properly. My diagnosis is not going to mean shit. And neither is anybody else's that says it to you online. Someone needs to get in there, feel around, and make you do some exercises to show them what is actually, and then they can tell you what is actually wrong. I don't think writing your favorite pro or anybody, it's just not the right way to do it. You have to go get assessed properly from a doctor or a professional. Do you rotate hostility and bloodshot daily, weekly by feel? Yeah, I do actually. Days where I feel a little bit like sluggish, I'll take some hostility. Days where I feel good and I don't need to get the wake up from it, I'll take bloodshot. So that's kind of how I work them. But both give me a great pump. So I'm not, some people are like, well, I want to get a great pump, so I got to take bloodshot. Hostility has a ton of citrulline in it. It has the NO3T. I mean, you have everything you need to have a great pump. So hostility will give you that pump too. So I don't want people to feel like they have to take bloodshot to get the pump. Hostility will give you the pump you need. It's just if you're pump focused mainly, that's when you would need the bloodshot. How can training and nutrition be during Ramadan to keep gains for the month of fasting? It's going to be tough, man. I think anybody tells you can keep all your gains is kind of lying to you. The only way I see being able to keep your gains is if you sleep through the day. If you sleep from sunrise to sunset and then stay up the other hours of the day and go train in the middle of the night, then I think you're actually better off than if you have to fast all day long, because now you're awake, you're not eating. And this is not talking about somebody who just wants to look good at the beach. These Q&As are geared to people who are talking to me as a professional bodybuilder. I'm giving you advice as a professional bodybuilder. I'm telling you what I noticed in my own life when I was trying to build maximum amounts of muscle, not eating from sunrise to sunset is not beneficial for helping you put on mass, and there's not really any way around it. You're going to notice a difference in your physique after 1 month of fasting, even if you eat 5,000 calories in the 3 meals. Like, you know, some people say, well, if you break your fast at sunset, then you have a few hours to eat before you go to bed. So get in like 3 really, really heavy meals and then go to bed and then wake up just before sunrise and make sure you eat 1 really, really big meal and you'll be fine. I've never witnessed that. And I've done that. I did when I used to fast. I don't fast anymore, but when I used to fast, I did that and it didn't work. And not eating from sunrise to sunset every day for 30 days is going to cause some type of muscle loss. But if your religion is that important to you, then that's just something you're going to have to sacrifice for that month. And like I said, do the best you can. The best you can is if sunset is 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever it is at this year, you have, you know, if you stay up till like say 11 o'clock at night, from 8 to 11, now you can get 2 really big meals in, maybe 3 if you stay up a little later. You know, if you stay up till midnight, you can eat at 8, 10, 12, get in 3 really, really big meals, get up at 6 a.m. before sunrise or whatever the time is, have another really big meal. And then if you can sleep through some of the day, do that. And if you can't, you're just going to have to, you know, get used to the fact. As far as training goes, personally, I would probably train at night between like the 8 and 10 o'clock meal. But if you can't do that, then I would train first thing in the morning after your sunrise meal. I definitely want some nutrients in my body around the time of training. I don't want to go in the middle of the day when I'm fasting and go train for 2 hours when I haven't had anything to eat the 3 or 4 hours before, and I'm not going to eat for 3 or 4 hours after. My training is going to be at some point closer to whenever I'm eating, ideally between the 8 and 10 o'clock meal. That way I have some food before and after. So I hope that helps, man. It's a tough thing to do in bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is predicated on being able to get that food in every couple hours. You got to get that food in. And when I don't, and when clients don't, I see a direct change in their physique. So I don't believe people who say it's okay to fast, nothing will happen. It just doesn't seem to be the case. Would you recommend hyperextensions for strengthening lower back? I always seem to get crazy lower back pumps when doing them, to the point it's literally impossible for me to continue further. Yes, I would. I think they're great for strengthening your lower back. I think deadlifts off the ground are better for strengthening your lower back, but I wouldn't neglect hyperextensions. How often and what duration do you feel is best to practice posing going into a show? I would definitely practice your posing all throughout your prep. I think I would really ramp things up at the 6-week mark. So at 6 weeks out, I would start practicing your posing every day. Not for a ton of time, just 10 minutes. 10 minutes a day is a good time to get in some shots and really start to feel your body and start to feel what it's going to take to hold on to poses. I think at the 3-week mark, I would definitely increase that, maybe 20 minutes a day. And I think it's good for a bunch of reasons. One, it's muscle control. It's going to help you get more conditioned. It's going to give a different look to your muscle, and you're going to be the guy on stage that looks the most composed, and your presentation will be the best because you've really, really practiced it. The guys who don't practice, you can see they're shaky on stage. They're tired. They're bending over, trying to catch their breath. They're not able to hold the pose the whole time the judge calls it. They have to hold it for a second and they let it go. I think Rami was a great example of that at the Olympia. You could see that he had been practicing his posing. He held the poses for the longest. He looked the most composed. Branch Warren was always a great one for that. He used to practice every day for like the last month. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Start with 10 minutes, bump to 20, start 6 weeks out, at 3 weeks out, bump to 20, do it all the way into the show. When are you the most uncomfortable? Peak off season or 1 week before a show? I think 1 week before a show is the most stressful time. So I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable. It's just, I think there's a climax there, right? Because you're building this pressure. And for me, the last week was always the height of the pressure. So 1 week before the show is a high pressure game, but not uncomfortable. I feel great. I look great. look great when I wear my clothes. Like I feel like uber confident at that point. So it's not an uncomfortable feeling. It's just a high stress feeling because I know show days are around the corner. Peak off season, very uncomfortable. It's very tough to do anything. You're breathing heavy all the time. It's hard to, you opt for wearing sandals instead of shoes, so you don't have to put on your shoes. My wife used to put on, man, there was periods of time in peak Fouad mode when my wife was putting my socks on for me. Maybe not every day, but there would be days where I'd be like, oh, she's in the bedroom, maybe she'll help me. So peak off season really sucks. And this is why when I see people that are like, oh, you can stay lean and you can get huge, and I'm like, I don't think so, man. I don't think so. And my version of lean and your version of lean might be two different things. My version of lean is like show lean, right? And I see guys staying in that like single digit body fat and trying to get big, and I'm like, I don't see it, you know. Like even James right now, for example, and I keep using James as example because he's so diligent. Even James right now, you know, weighs around 300 pounds. He's going to go on stage at 260. So there's the fat has to be gained. Doesn't mean you have to eat shit, but you're going to have a surplus where you put on a lot of weight if you want to really gain mass. And that is a really, really uncomfortable feeling, because it's not only that you maybe don't look great, it's also that you're out there pounding the food, man. You're pounding that food back every single day, meal after meal. You eat one. By the time you're done that one, by the time your body just starts to digest it, you start to feel normal, it's time to eat another one. And they're not small meals, man. You're eating like it's a full-time job, and it's extremely uncomfortable, and it's everything you imagine it would be. Just picture like a 24/7. My friends used to get annoyed with me because I used to complain about my stomach bothering me so much. Picture like a 24/7 like Thanksgiving dinner feeling all the time. And it's not just your stomach, because you're so anabolic. Like everything's so full. Like your chest is really full, your shoulders are really full, your arms are really full. Everything's kind of like stretched out, and you never feel like, I don't know how to explain it properly, but like you never feel decompressed. Just like I can breathe, and I'm flexible, and I can move around, and you don't have any of that. Everything's very stiff and blown out. And like I say, the only time that feels good is the 1 hour in the gym. When you go to the gym for that 1 hour a day and you're filled the fuck out from eating, and you've been eating like a horse, that 1 hour in the gym is the best hour you're ever going to get, right? Because everything feels good. You're strong, your joints feel good, the muscles, the pump is stupid because you're so full. So you live in the 23 hours of hell for 1 hour of heaven. is pretty much what it is peak off season is 23 hours of hell and 1 hour of heaven in the gym. And that's the best way I can put it. Why do people always say squats are bad for knees? I think because people kind of squat wrong, and they eventually end up with knee problems. So squats have been synonymous with bad knees, but I don't think there's anything bad about, I don't think there's anything actually bad about squatting for your knees. I also think, look, let's be completely honest. Your knees are going to end up being sore if you squat 300, 400, 500 pounds. And maybe not the first day, maybe the second day, maybe not the first year, but after 5, 6, 10 years, you're going to have sore knees. Like I have sore knees. I don't have any knee problems. My knees function perfectly fine, but they get sore. But anytime you're squatting 400 or 500 pounds for a decade or more, that's going to happen. So it's not really about it being bad for your knees. It's just like any other tendon or joint in your body, is it's going to get worn out after extended use and pounding for a decade or more. You know what I mean? People who end up with knee problems after like the first year, they're probably not squatting properly. You know, they're going up on their toes, or their stance is too narrow, or, you know, a whole host of different things. But if you're getting knee problems after 6 months, something's wrong with your form. If you're getting sore knees and it's from a decade of training, that's to be expected. Best exercises for lower lat development. I would say reverse grip barbell rows, even though it's not 100% natural feel. The Dorian Yates reverse grip barbell row is one of my favorites. I think, let me think. I mean, dumbbell rows, if they're done properly, pulled into the hip, can be very good for that. I think, one of the main things I do for lower lat development is it's pulling into my lower stomach. So a lot of people, when they do a rowing movement, will pull where they're strongest. And where you're strongest is usually midway in your body, right? So you pull here. And that's usually because your rear delt's helping, your teres are helping, your rhomboids are helping, and your arm is helping. So all of these things are moving, so it's easy to pull the weight, right? If you lower your hand to like your belly button area or your love handle area and then pull, if your shoulder's not lifted, right? If you drop your shoulder and pull, you'll notice that it's a lot harder. You can't use the same weight, right? If you try and do a dumbbell row and pull into your lower abdomen or your love handle area versus pulling into your pec, say, you'll notice it's a lot easier to pull into your pec because all those other muscle groups are helping maximally. They're all going to be involved in the lower row as well, but to a lesser degree. So one of the main things I tell people is if you're trying to grow your lower lats or focus more on your lower lats, pull lower on the bar, right? Like if you're rowing, row lower into your stomach. If you're holding a bar, hold it lower so you're pulling into your stomach. Where you pull the bar is where you're going to grow the most, right? So if you pull up here, you're going to develop the top of your back. If you pull down low, you're going to get more of your lower back, more of your lower lats, more of that area. So that's really my best advice for lower lat development is pull the bar, pull the track wherever it's tracking. That's where it's going to grow. As far as exercises go, like I said, reverse grip barbell row is probably my favorite for lower lat growth. Thoughts on Psarms? Have you used any of them? I don't really want to cover any drug talk on this channel, but Psarms are kind of a gray area, so I'll touch on that a bit. I don't use Psarms. I never have used Psarms. I'm not a big fan of Psarms. I'm always weary of things that promise the world with no side effects. So that alone makes me look. And it's not even just in bodybuilding terms. Anything in life, any aspect of my life. If somebody promises me the world and I don't have to pay anything for it, that's a problem. And I generally am very skeptical of those type of things. And Psarms, I feel like, promise a lot. And they're like, hey, you won't get any side effects, but it'll do all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. It seems like it should cost a lot more money if it's going to do all of these things and it's not going to cause me any side effects. And it also feels like a lot more people would be using them if they did all the things they said they did. I tried them myself in a down period. I didn't really notice much. Not my thing. Not my thing. I'm not saying it can't work for anybody. I know some people who use them. It's just not my thing. During testing and formulation, did you try using Bloodshot mixed with Intra after already using Hostility as a pre? Because damn, it's great. No, I didn't, because Bloodshot is a pre-workout and I want the Bloodshot ingredients in my system beforehand. I don't want them in my system halfway through my workout. It kind of makes sense. So it might be helping you. I'm not saying it's not. I think that's great. But for me, I want, if I take Bloodshot, I want all the ingredients kind of flowing through my body before I get to the gym. I also don't really I never mix Bloodshot and Hostility unless I do like half a scoop of each or half a serving of each. There's just too many nitrates in both formulas to stack together and it be safe. So if I'm going to stack them together, I'll do half a scoop of Hostility and one scoop of Bloodshot, which is a half a serving of each. What's your current split and days off? Monday, chest and shoulders. Tuesday, hamstrings and a little bit of quad. Wednesday is back. Thursday is a day off. Wednesday's back in calves. Thursday's a day off. Friday is arms. And Saturday is legs, quads with a little bit of hamstring. And Sunday's off. So Thursday and Sunday off. If growing is the goal, how long would you take to get back to pre-contest weight after a show? This is different for everybody, man. Look, the common theme now, or the common message now, is reverse diet out of a show and grow slowly back to your weight. That's honestly never ever what I did. This may be one area where I could say I did it wrong, but my coaches weren't advising it at the time, and I think I did okay growing in the off season. So my philosophy was get back to your weight as soon as you can. So once I was done a show, I would start eating. And my body would soak up all that shit. And after a month, I was already like back up to, if I compete at 250, I was back up to like 285. And then I would slow the food down. Like if I started to get too fat, I would slow the food down and go from 280 to 300. And that might take me another month. But the first month I had put on 30 pounds. I would already go from 250 to 280, and I would still look pretty good, obviously holding some body fat, but I still felt like I looked fine. And then from 280 to 300 might take me another month, maybe 2 months. So I would never get extremely fat, but I wanted to get back to that 280 number quick. I'm not trying to waste time, right? I want to get the calories in. You guys know me. I'm a bulking guy. I want to get the calories in. I want to get bulking. I want to get as much calories in as I can. And I'm going from 250 to 280 as fast as I can. As long as I'm not fat. Like, you have to understand, when you're 250 pounds, 10 pounds of it is water, 10 pounds of it is glycogen, 10 pounds of it is fat, right? It's not 30 pounds of fat. So it's going to be different if you're 200 pounds. You just don't go from 200 pounds to 250 and be like, oh, okay, that's what Fouad said. You got to still look good relatively, right? You're going to gain some fat, but like you have to still look good if you're going to do what I was saying. So from 250 to 280, I still felt like I looked okay. I still had abs. I wasn't like, didn't have huge love handles. Like I was all right. And that's when I would slow things down, because I knew after 280, if I kept eating the way I was eating, going up from 280, I was going to start to get fat. So once I started seeing like my lines disappear, I would slow the food down. And then I would take it easy from then on, adding food in slowly and letting my body grow without getting just, extremely fat. So I guess the message I'm trying to give you post show is eat what you have to eat to put your weight back on, all the way up until you start feeling like I'm too fat. And that's going to be relative also, because some people, when they put on 5 pounds after a show, they're like, oh, I look like shit all of a sudden. And some people put on 50 after a show and they look like fat slobs, but they're like, I still look great. You're going to have to be your own gauge, man. Like for me, when I put on those 30 pounds, I felt like I still looked good. I was holding a little bit of fat, but I still looked all right. That's when I started to pull the food back, because I'm like, okay, from this point on, I'm going to start to get sloppy. I don't think anybody should ever be sloppy in the off season. If you've lost all the lines on your physique, you are sloppy and you're now bulking way too hard. So if you can go from, let's say you did a show and you were 200 pounds. If you can go from 200 pounds to 220 and still look like you have all your lines, then just get there as fast as you can. And then from there, I would be like, okay, now I'm going to reduce the calories a bit and let my body grow into 230, 240 slowly with a little bit less food intake. Let's see here. I have a physical job, a wife, and 2 kids. Is bodybuilding life doable? Yeah, you'd have to quit your job eventually. I mean, it's such a tough question. It's like, I don't know. What is your job? How physical is it? I mean, does your wife care if you go to work? Does your wife care if you go to work and then go to the gym after and spend all your time cooking and eating? Do you have the money you need to buy all the food and have your wife cook it for you, or do you have the time to cook it yourself? Do you have, are your kids going to be annoyed that you're not spending time with them because you're at the gym? And there's so many, like I could ask you 1,000 questions in return, right? My only advice to the question you gave me based on the information I have is this. I have a physical job, a wife, and 2 kids. Is bodybuilding life doable? Yes. If you can check all the other boxes I mentioned, then yes, it doesn't matter. If your kids don't care that you're going to be preoccupied with your physique, if your wife doesn't care, if you have the money, if your job is not so physical that it's hurting your gains, if you have the genetics and you're not just wasting everybody's time for no reason, then yeah, it's doable. But like I said, there's all these other factors that you have to worry about because with a wife and kids, and I'm not sure how old you are, and I don't know how much you need your job. I mean, it's a calculation, right? It's not like bodybuilding's not easy. I know it looks easy. I know like, oh, those guys just lift weights and they eat food and they make money. First of all, not a lot of people make money. People make enough money. Maybe they make enough money to survive. But unless you're hustling and you're doing things and you're doing like, I got a podcast, I got a supplement company, and when I was bodybuilding, I would do extra stuff. I would do YouTube videos and I would sell clothing or whatever it was. Like I always had my fingers in other coaching. I always had my fingers in other things to make money. So bodybuilding is not easy to make money. It's a hustle and it's a lot of work. And if I had a wife and kids, I would be very wary of putting them in jeopardy of trying to chase a bodybuilding dream if I didn't really have something set out already. Like I have friends who left their jobs for the bodybuilding world, but it's because they kind of were set up already. And I'll give you an example. So I'm not going to mention any names, but I know a very well-known coach who had a very good job and has a wife and kids. And he was like, I want to be part of this industry. So actually, you can just say, even John Meadows. I didn't even think of John. John is the best example. John used to work at a bank. Wife, 2 kids, working at a bank. He's like, you know what? I don't want to work at the bank anymore. I want to put all my eggs in this bodybuilding thing. But John had a lot of clientele built up already as a coach. So he had this big income coming in from bodybuilding already. So when he left the bank, his family wasn't in jeopardy. He had a whole system set up already. And that's the only time I would advise somebody to leave their job for bodybuilding if they have a family, especially. You have to have things set up so that when you leave, it doesn't affect your life. John was still able to pay all his bills, all his things, do all his work, and it not affect anything because he was already doing it. So yeah, I mean, all these questions have to be answered before you can ask me if it's doable or not doable. It really depends on your family and your time and what you're capable of doing. What would be the minimum amount of protein meat per meal? My recommendation for anybody trying to gain mass is 1.5 grams per pound of lean body mass. I feel like maintenance is 1 gram per pound. Now, some of that's going to be dependent on the rest of your diet. Some people say, well, if you're eating a ton of carbs and you don't need 1.5 grams, or if you have a lot of fats, if you're on keto, there's a million different ways to do it. So I'm just telling you what I like. I don't eat a shit ton of carbs. I get in, for my body, I get in 300 or 400 grams a day, which is not a lot for somebody who weighs 300 pounds or close to it. And I don't eat a ton of fat. So I get in 1.5 grams per pound, 1.2. Right now I'm a little bit lower. I'm probably at 1.2 or 1. But when I was building muscle at my peak, man, I was between 1.5 and 2. 1.5 to 2 grams per pound of lean body mass is what I was eating on a daily basis when I was really putting on as much muscle as I could. So that's my recommendation. Maintenance purposes, 1 to 1.5. Less than 1, I don't know if it's going to help in the bodybuilding world myself. Any advice for college football player that wants to bodybuild after graduation? Yeah, just start, man. There's a ton of advice. Get on a proper eating plan, get on a proper program, and then be as consistent as possible. I mean, it's a very broad question, right? So hard to answer. If the genetic elite require less gear, would the genetic proletariat require more? No, I don't think it works that way, because that means you'd be assuming that gear can make up for genetics, and it can't. It's just a shitty, it's just one of those things. you can't, yeah, it's tough. I would love to be able to say that. I would love to be able to say that if your genetics aren't great, that you can take more gear and make up for it. And it's just not the case. There's a long list of guys that some of them and are very popular, that have taken all the gear in the world and just not made it. They just couldn't turn pro. They couldn't get their physique right. And it's because the genetics aren't there. Like, I mean, so many people come to mind right now. There's so many people that are very popular. You know them from YouTube, and they've taken everything, right? And they've made it very public. Oh, I took all these things. I took this and this amount and this and that amount. And they're amounts like that I wouldn't give them to you if I was trying to kill you. That's how much, that's how far off the amounts are. And still couldn't turn pro, couldn't make it, couldn't get there. Right. And unfortunately, that's not how it works, right? You either have the genetics, you can build the muscle, or you can't build the muscle. And if you try and do it with drugs and it does work, your physique just won't look right. Like, there are other people that have built a pro bodybuilding size physique with tons of drugs, but just didn't look right. Right? It threw off some other part of their body, or the muscle didn't look right, and they just couldn't turn pro because they were standing next to guys that had better genetics. So their physique flowed at that size. It looked like it belonged at 220, 240, 250 pounds. Whereas this other person who did it with drugs, no, something's not right. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right. It doesn't flow right. The muscle looks beat up. Something looks wrong. He looks too stringy. Something's not there. And we're not going to let him win because he doesn't deserve to. So, no. So to answer your question, long story short, there has to be a genetic component. And it blows my mind when I hear people say, Branch Warren didn't have the genetics and Dorian Yates didn't have the genetics. They did it with hard work. But bullshit. I'll call bullshit every time. Branch Warren, if you look at him when he was like 19, already had an amazing physique. He beat Jay Cutler the first time they competed. That's how good his physique was. Amazing, massive chest, huge legs, kind of tiny waist. He had it all built right there already at like 20 years old. And if you look back at pictures of Dorian Yates, like when he's partying with his buddies, he's like got a 6-pack and shit. And he's like still got the cutout of his pecs and everything. You don't build the amount of muscle that Branch Warren built or Dorian Yates built without awesome genetics. Did they have pretty physiques in that regard? Genetically, yeah, they had to work harder to build muscle in certain places to correct things that maybe weren't God-given gifts to them. But to say they have bad genetics is it's a misnomer, because you can't get to you can't reach the levels they reached without great genetics, and no amount of drugs would make up for that. Can you advise how many shirts and hoodies are planned No, I can't. Can you advise how many shirts, hoodies are planned this year and coming months? No, those things are hard to plan, because the hoodies, honestly, I just sometimes think of them off the top of my head. The shirts sometimes come up from something on the podcast. So, we're always trying to do new stuff, but I can't tell you exactly what we're doing with clothing. Let me see. What would be the best choice for equipment for starting out, since there's no places nearby, closest than an hour and a half away? I work 10 hours a day. Okay, well, this is going to sound silly to you guys, but I forget what they're called. It's not Precor. I can't remember the name right now, so I apologize. But if you've ever seen the kind of, I think they're yellow. I think their brand name, the brand color is like yellow or gold. They're kind of like a multi-station hammer strength. I'm sure somebody in the comment section will correct me and find the name, but they're like a stationed hammer strength machine. It has everything. You adjust the bench, you can do bench press, you adjust it again, you can do shoulders. They have a preacher curl on them. They have a little squat pad. If you adjust the one side, you can do lat pull downs. So it's like a fully adjustable one station. And I think they're like, for the amount of exercises you can do on it, it's not expensive, because I think they're like $5 to $7 grand, which is a lot of money. But if you tried to buy all of those pieces individually, you'd spend a lot more than $5 to $7 grand. So that's why I say it's cheap, because you can do a full workout on that one thing. So that's the one part that's the advantage to it. The second part that's the advantage to it is, like this office right here, I don't know, it's like, 10 feet by 20 feet. I don't know what the size of this room is, but you could literally put it right in the middle of this room, and this could be my gym, because it fits in like it's just one piece that you could put in the center of your room somewhere, and it could be your little gym area. So size wise, I think it's a good investment. It could go in a garage or something really easily. Size wise, it's a good investment. It covers all your bases, all your exercises. And I think for the price, for the amount of exercises you can do, it's the cheapest one. And I'm really sorry, I can't remember the name. I think it's Power Tech. Power Tech, is that it? I think Kai Green endorses them, I think. I want to say it's Power Tech, but I could be wrong. So somebody, if you guys know, correct me in the comments section. Okay. Advantages and disadvantages of using carb powder as opposed to real food pre and post training, belt squat. Oh, there's two questions here. So first, I'll cover the carb powder. The absorbability of your carb is going to matter more than anything when you're training. Okay. Like, there are a million different carb powders, let alone real food. But let's just take real food versus any carb powder. The digestibility and absorbability of the carb is going to be way slower. So if you try and eat like, let's say you're going to like eat 100 grams or 50 grams of carbs from muffins. A lot of people are not going to be able to eat a muffin right before their workout or during their workout and not feel it in their gut when they're training. It's going to be like, oh, I ate a muffin like while I'm training, and my stomach is bloated now, or my pump's not as good because I'm trying to digest my food. The carb powder is going to absorb much more quickly. Now, the other thing is, in the carb powder world, now you have a whole bunch of different carb powders, right? You have dextrose, you have maltodextrin, you have carbolin, you have waxy maize, and at the very, very top, you have highly branched cyclic dextrin. Now, for the average person, you're probably not going to care if you're using dextrose, corn sugar, which is just corn sugar. It's just very cheap. You might care if you're trying to bulk and you try and take 50 grams of it. You're going to be like, why does my stomach feel fucked up when I'm trying to work out? I really care. Like, this stuff matters to me a lot. I don't want to drink anything when I'm training that's going to affect my stomach. I don't want to feel bloated. I don't want to feel like I have to slow down. I don't want to feel nauseous. I don't want to feel anything. I want to feel like I'm drinking flavored water and it's not affecting me. It's actually, and I want to make sure I feel better using it. The highly branched cyclic dextrin is the highest rate of absorbability into your body. Like, it passes through the intestinal wall the most quickly of all the carb powders. So when our carb powder comes out, it will be just branched cyclic dextrin. It won't be mixed with anything. It won't be mixed with any dextrose. It won't be mixed with anything. It'll just be highly branched cyclic dextrin, because I told them that's what I want. I just want that. I want something that's going to absorb as fast as possible. It's not going to cause me any gut distress at all, but it's going to make my muscle feel 1,000 times better while I'm training. So that is the main reason why you use a carb powder over eating real food when training, because the absorbability rate is not going to be the same. You want the fastest absorbability rate so it does not affect your training. Second question is, belt squat, is it beneficial as helping as a low back squat? Yes, belt squats are great. Just be careful, because I've heard a lot of people have knee injuries with belt squats. So just be careful with it, but it's a great exercise. Favorite homemade meal your mom made as a kid? Damn. I think, it's funny. I always love pasta. My mom used to make it's a, I don't know if it's an Arab dish or just something my mom made, but it was pasta with yogurt. So I know it sounds crazy, but my mom would make a pasta with like a, and it was a warm dish. It wasn't, I mean, you could eat it cold too, but actually think it tasted better cold. Now that I think about it, I think I'm going to go to my mom's house and see her. Anyway, sorry. So it was a yogurt, plain yogurt. Imagine like Greek yogurt. That's probably closest to what my mom used to make. So imagine like a Greek yogurt with pasta, and then she would mix it up with like mint, salt, pepper, a little bit of garlic, and then she would roast pine nuts and put the pine nuts on top, and it was so good. So that was one of my favorite meals growing up, and then I think it's translated into my adult years, because now my favorite meal is that same pasta but with tomato sauce and meat sauce. So I've always just been a pasta crazy. It's one of my favorite meals. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff my mom used to make too, but that's the first thing that came to mind. So I hear a lot of bodybuilders eat a lot of fish in contest prep and even in the off season as well. If fish is a little out of your budget, what would you consider to be the best alternative? Listen, fish isn't magic. The reason fish is so beneficial. I mean, if we're talking about salmon, it's because of the high fat content, which is very good fats in salmon. But if we're talking about just white fish like haddock or, orange roughy or whatever it is, the main reason we're eating it is because it digests really quickly and it's a pure source of protein and very little fat. You can kind of get that in other places. Like turkey is very low in fat. It's not that much higher than fish. Chicken is a little higher than turkey, but it's not that. You're talking about some of the fish is like 1 or 2 grams of fat. Turkey's like 4 grams of fat. It's not like that different that it's like you can't get shredded by eating chicken breast, or you can't get shredded by eating turkey, or I mean, tuna is cheap. You can eat tuna. Tuna is 0 fat. Like it's the same thing as eating whitefish. It's not any different. You just get tuna. But then you got to be worried about the mercury content. So I think if you're just focused on getting lean and you're eating fish because it's low in fat, you can get lean without eating fish. And actually, there's some very cheap sources of fish too. If you eat pollock, when I was younger, coming up, I hated fish, but my coach was like, "Look, you got to eat fish. This is part of your diet, whatever." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna eat fish." I used to get big bags of pollock, which is a white fish, and there was like $2 a pound, because it was, I don't know if it's a shit fish, or I don't know very much about fish. Like I don't know about the different types of fish and what's great and what's not, but I'm assuming for $2 a pound, it's not a very, it's pretty basic. It's not an amazing fish to eat because it didn't taste that great, but it had like 1 gram of fat in 4 ounces. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to eat. So there is cheap white fish. You don't have to eat because orange roughy on the other side is like $16 a pound. So you don't have to eat orange roughy. You can eat, pollock, or you can eat sole, which is also flounder, which is not that expensive either. So there are cheap alternatives to what you're looking for. Can if it fits your macros work for professional bodybuilding? To a certain extent. I think if it fits your macros done properly, can work to a certain extent, but I think after you get to like the 4-week mark, I want to say 4 weeks because it's a pretty crucial period. I think when you get to the 4-week mark, you really need to have the same diet every day, because you need to know, if I remove this thing, what does my body look like? If I add this thing, what does my body look like? And if you're eating something different every single day, then you don't know exactly how your body's going to look. And even Lane Norton, who's like the if it fits your macros guy, told me that was true. Like he agreed with me that like from the 4-week mark, when you're talking about professional bodybuilding and really, really knowing what your body looks like, you need to know exactly what you ate the day before, because every little thing will make a difference in how you look. So can you get shredded using if it fits your macros? Yes. Should you use it for a bodybuilding show? Up until the last 3 or 4 weeks, I would say yes. Okay, guys, there's still a ton here, and we've gone well over an hour. So I'm gonna maybe do a part 2, or maybe we'll split this into 2 parts, and then I'll do some more, and we'll just do a separate video altogether. So maybe we'll split this into 2 parts, and then we'll do another video, and I'll get to more of these questions. But I really appreciate you guys participating again. I hope this gave you guys some type of benefit in your own training. And I appreciate you guys following Hosstile and supporting the brand always. Thank you very much. And until next time, guys, train hard and sacrifice without regret. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and like the video. And if you get a chance, check out the description for all the different links to all the different places you can find Hosstile and myself. And lastly, check out hosstile.com for our new line of supplements and all of our apparel and gear. Thanks again for watching.